Hello and welcome back to another episode of MLM Horror Stories. My name's Hannah, and this is a series on my channel where viewers will send in their crazy, ridiculous, horrific, sometimes funny experiences with multi-level marketing companies, and I pick out a few and then we read and react to them together. In saying that, my MLM story inbox has over 1,500 emails in it at this point, but I can never ever have too many. So if at any point you have an MLM horror story to send in to me, please don't hesitate to do so. The instructions for how to do that are in the description box down below. I've got several great stories for you today, so let's jump right into it. This story says, "Hi Hannah, first of all, of course I want to say thank you for the work you do exposing MLMs and also the newer influencer series. I found out one of my friends watches you as well and we had a great time talking about your videos and all of these predatory practices. That's so fun, oh my gosh." So this is my MLM horror story and I wanted to preface it with a trigger warning for EDs because the last thing I want to do is make anyone uncomfortable. But this story starts roughly around the end of 2016. I met a girl, I'll call her Jane, and her friend while out shopping and we'd bonded a little bit and then added each other on Facebook. Almost immediately upon meeting her, she'd mentioned her work as a distributor for It Works. I'd never heard of it, but she explained that they sold health, wellness, and weight loss products. I was quick to tell her that I wasn't interested, and at first she was respectful of that. I'd also confessed to her early in our relationship that I had struggled on and off with an ED since college, roughly 2011, and I asked her not to try and sell the products to me out of respect for my mental health, which she also agreed to. I'm sure you can see where this is headed by now, but we became friends, but 90% of her life was talking about It Works and how great it was going for her, how many friends she had made, how much money she had made with it. I was saving up for a trip to visit a friend in Germany during this time, but I had an upsetting experience the last time I had visited her when I was fat shamed at a clothing store in Paris. So I started experiencing anxiety about my weight. I took a photo of myself next to my new car in June of 2017, and I was so upset by the way I looked that I spiraled back into disordered eating at that time. Jane was around me often, and there's no way that she didn't pick up on these habits and my constant anxiety over my weight. So knowing I had a history with an ED, she was happy to sell me all these great It Works products for weight loss, including their oh so famous wraps that allegedly slim your waist. And of course, it was the cheapest option for me to commit to a 3-month plan for these various supplements. I think at the time it was ThermoFit, possibly now TFXX, they keep changing the name, and Fat Fighter, along with a monthly cleanse drink. I was spending close to $120 a month if I remember correctly, and this was on their discounted membership plan. At the time, I was also working as a caregiver for a woman with Alzheimer's. She passed suddenly and I found myself out of work at the beginning of 2018, 7 months before my scheduled trip to Germany. Jane was headed to Tampa for an It Works convention with her downline girlies and invited me along because I deserved a break. In spite of all the cult-like behavior I witnessed outside of the convention, I got the distributor talk all weekend and eventually caved and became a distributor myself, as Jane promised that she would help me enough to earn the $5,000 bonus offered if you reached a certain level in the first few months. Since I was suddenly out of work and I had a trip coming up and a way to pay for my own product usage, it was promising to me because I didn't have the knowledge of MLMs that I do now. Once I was signed up, she did not in fact help me at all and explained that she was too busy with her own customers to babysit me. Gotta love a good old bait and switch to trap you in an MLM. Promise that she's gonna help you make $5,000 really quickly to bait you into it and then switch it up and not help you at all. Great. By this point, I'd also lost 50+ pounds, not because of the fake supplements, but from an extreme calorie deficit and working out on top of that. So Jane began using my selfies to sell It Works on her social media and encourage me to do the same, usually with some hook about how together we've lost X amount of weight, when the majority of it was myself struggling with an ED that she absolutely had to be aware of. While I was on vacation, she posted side-by-side shots of me at my highest and lowest weights, a 90-pound weight loss over the period of a year and a day, and wrote a really sketchy post that not only attributed my weight loss to her products, but also insinuated that the Europe trip I had saved up for the past 2 years was due to the supposed income I was making. Hint, none. I was losing money. This, combined with her decision to add life coach to her list of Groupon certification courses and shift toward expanding into wellness, finally caused me to crack and cut her and It Works out of my life. I was overwhelmed by the fact that she had continuously used my struggles with an ED to further her own business and encourage me to do the same for her MLM. Sorry this story is so long and I hope it wasn't confusing. I wanted to say again that I genuinely appreciate what you do and it's emotional to me to think how much your videos could have helped me back then. I'm so glad they're there to help others now. With love, Heather. P.S. I included the Facebook post that she made of me. I took her name and her image out of it, but it's up to you if you want to blur my name and face. Don't matter either way. Well, thank you, Heather, for putting in the work to go back and find this exact Facebook post so that we can show it. I love when we can reference reference back exactly to what you're talking about in this story. So this says, meet Heather, my best friend. So we randomly met in a Michael's and we got connected on Facebook. She wanted to lose weight like me. We were both in the same boat, but honestly, she didn't use all of her products at first. Yep, I'm telling on her a little bit, haha. But once she did, my gosh, she started melting away. These photos were taken 1 year and 1 day apart. Now my bestie is over in Germany having an amazing vacation, looking amazing. I'm so proud of her, happy for her, and the coolest part is that she also is able to help anyone who asks, how did you do it? And get them the same amazing products at the price we do. $20 to have a chance to seriously change your life? What is really stopping you? And here she's showing these 2 photos of you side by side, showing the drastic difference thanks to It Works products. And this is not the first story that I've read on my channel of somebody saying, like, somebody took my photos and they used it for a product promotion when that wasn't even what was going on behind the scenes. I'm pretty positive it was from It Works too. And of course, that's incredibly deceptive to show 2 photos side by side and say it was the products that did this, completely disregarding the eating habits, the exercise habits, the mental health struggles that are going on behind the scenes. And let this be a reminder that weight loss should not automatically be celebrated as a good thing. There could be things going on behind the scenes that are not healthy for that person to be doing that are resulting in weight loss. And by praising the weight loss, you're inadvertently praising the troubling health conditions that are going on. The truth is, you don't know fully what is going on in a person's life to make their weight fluctuate up or down. So how about we just don't comment on it? How about we don't call attention to it? It's even more gross that your friend seems to actually have known what was going on and she still put on a different show for the public regarding it. But just generally speaking, how about we don't speak on behalf of other people, talking about why they may or may not have achieved certain weight results. But in a health and wellness MLM like It Works, it's all about personal testimony, right? It's all about showcasing how the products are working. And there's sort of this sick culture of like taking other people's before and after photos and posting them on your own platforms, like sharing other people's testimonies that you know of versus just sharing your own. And as is evident by your story, that allows for a lot of deception to go on, a lot of half-truths being told. And it's not fair or okay for her to take your situation and to spin it into her own narrative for her own financial benefit. It's just gross, and it shows us that everything in an MLM is self-serving, even though you're on a team and even though you have a downline and you're all working together for a common goal. It's still every man for themselves and stooping as low as necessary to make a sale. I'm sorry that this happened to you, but it does make for a very helpful story that we can share so that ideally people listening won't find themselves in the same position. Still to come are some very entertaining stories, including one from a former Monat rep who saw herself in one of my MLM Top Fails videos. But first, let's give a moment for today's sponsor, Magic Spoon. Magic Spoon brings you the delicious nostalgia of your favorite childhood cereal in a high-protein, no-sugar form. They've got the classic flavors like cocoa, peanut butter, and my personal favorite, fruity, but they've also got specialty flavors like cinnamon roll, maple waffle, birthday cake, and so many more. The cereal has 13 to 14 grams of protein and 0 grams of sugar per serving, so it makes it the perfect snack for really any time of the day. My toddler and I have gotten in the habit of eating it pretty much every day as a mid-afternoon snack between lunch and dinner, and I find that it really hits the spot because it fulfills that sweet and carby craving, but Magic Spoon has 0 grams of sugar and only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs per serving. I've also been known to eat a bowl of Magic Spoon for breakfast, as a pre or post-workout meal, as a late night snack, and now Magic Spoon has recently launched their new treats, which is like a cereal bar with 11 to 12 grams of protein and only 1 gram of sugar. That makes it even easier to enjoy on the go. They're crispy, crunchy, and airy, and they come in a variety of flavors like marshmallow, chocolate peanut butter, and blueberry muffin. At the time of filming this video, I'm actually packing to move back to Florida because I've been living in Washington State with family while my husband is deployed, and I've already got a few Magic Spoon treats packed into my carry-on because I know they'll be the perfect high-protein snack for that travel day. If you'd like to give Magic Spoon a try for yourself, you can visit the link in the description box below and use my code Hannah Alonso for $5 off. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product that it's backed by a 100% happiness guarantee online, so if you don't like it for any reason, they refund your money, no questions asked. You can also find Magic Spoon in your nearest grocery store, but if you want the discount, again, you can go to magicspoon.com/Hannah Alonso or use my code Hannah Alonso at checkout for $5 off. Thank you, Magic Spoon, for your support of the channel. Now let's continue on with these MLM horror stories. This story says, "Hi Hannah, if you choose to read this horror story on your channel, please leave out my name. Although I'm no longer ashamed to share this story with others, I'm still a very private person. Trigger warning for both R and death of a young child. Completely understandable if what follows is too dark for your channel, and I won't be offended at all as a listener if you don't share this. I will put in my own own trigger warning here. I have pre-read this email. It is very horrific and very heavy, although I think there's an important lesson in here about the MLM industry, so I am going to include it. Just please be prepared that this one could be a lot to take, and feel free to skip to the next story if it's too much for you personally. I've been binging your content on and off for some time now, and I greatly appreciate how soothing your voice is and how committed you are to kindness in your commentary. Mixed with the clearly fierce passion you have for your work, it creates the perfect balance to get out of my own head at the end of a hard day. That makes me so happy to hear. Thank you. Last week, I had one too many crises at work and decided to snuggle in bed with the kiddies a little early and put on some YouTube for self-care. And I was surprised to see that my next suggestion to watch was a video you had posted several months ago on Trades of Hope. I had previously had a very negative experience with someone who I'm pretty sure was an advocate for this company. That's what they call their sales reps in the company, advocates, which is very problematic in its own right once you know what Trades of Hope sells. But learning that it was an MLM gave this memory a whole new and unfortunately uglier context. When I was in my last year of graduate school, I experienced R. Although I no longer blame myself for this, at that time I was very ashamed and told no one. That meant that I also did not get any follow-up medical attention, and a couple months later I discovered that I was pregnant. I won't pretend that I wasn't devastated. I was a single teaching assistant hugging the poverty line and living in a one-bedroom apartment off campus, physically healed from my experience but very much still struggling emotionally. I would not blame any woman for whatever choice she made in this situation, and I truly did consider all of my options, but in the end I knew what my individual heart wanted. I remember you saying in one of your videos that one thing you always knew you wanted to be was a mom, and it was the same for me. However she came to exist, this child was mine and I loved her. I still did not tell anyone what I had experienced that night, but now for mostly different reasons. It's interesting that the first words that come to mind are information control, probably from hearing you talk about how much MLMs use this tactic. Unlike those running Habitat for Huns, however, my intentions were good, I think. I didn't know if I wanted my daughter to ever know the circumstances that brought her into this world, and I absolutely wasn't ready to make that kind of decision. But I did know that if she ever did find out, I wanted to protect her by controlling where, when, and from whom that information came. My daughter was born a couple months before I graduated, and she was perfect in every imaginable, but admittedly exhausting way. I cherish every moment I got to spend being her mother, never having imagined that it was possible to love anyone that much. Unfortunately, during her first year of life, she contracted the flu, leading to medical complications and a surgery that she didn't survive. I am so sorry. That's something that no mother should have to endure, and I am so deeply, deeply hurt for you that that happened, and I'm wishing you all the best and sending you virtual hugs. I'm so sorry. My memories over the next year are few and vague and painful. I threw myself into work as much as I could, often at more than one job, but I didn't have much then in the way of family, and I isolated myself from all of my friends using my impossible schedule as an excuse. I don't remember exactly where in the time span Enter the Hun occurred, but it feels like it was about a year after my daughter's passing. This Hun's name was Patricia. You can use her real name since it's been years since all of this happened, and I'm no longer 100% sure if that even was her name. She was someone I had classes with during undergrad and had maintained a sparse casual friendship with during grad school. She had been sending me uplifting quotes and Bible verses for several months at least, as well as requests to meet up with her to get lunch, her treat, etc. I took them as kindness, but responded with brief, polite refusals, if at all. Maybe she wore me down, maybe I gave in to my need for a friend and break from the toxic cycle of overwork I was using to cope. I apologize that I don't exactly remember all of those details, but I did end up eventually meeting up with her at a pizza place close to where I worked. Honestly, for as much as the thought terrified me back then, at first it was a relief to have human-to-human interaction, to reminisce about our college days, to remember that some other version of myself had once existed. I was reluctant to discuss my grief, and she seemed sensitive to this, happy to discuss my work instead, but one did lead back to the other. Patricia told me that she could see how hard I worked, but she could tell that I was struggling, and she thought that she could help. She was working with an organization that helped mothers in impoverished countries to be able to keep their babies safe and healthy by creating a fair international market for their handmade art and other wares. That is how Trades of Hope operates. It's an MLM company where people can sign up for the business opportunity to sell these products, but the products that are being sold are handmade goods from people in developing countries. And it's positioned as like, well, you are supporting people in developing countries, you're supporting women, and mothers who are making handmade goods, and they're getting paid a fair wage for the creation of those goods, and you're getting paid a commission in our MLM business opportunity for selling them. Like was mentioned, I did an entire deep dive video on Trades of Hope, and I can link that below if you want to check it out. So it sounds like this college friend was potentially an advocate for Trades of Hope and trying to get you involved as well. She said that she had an opening for me to join her mission or something along those lines. I don't remember all the parts of the conversation verbatim, and that she felt called by God to share it with me. By being an advocate for others, my pain didn't need to be in vain. I could honor my child by helping other women to help their babies. It was likely her bringing up God at this point that derailed her pitch. Although I'm in a much better place today with my spirituality, this was not the case when this conversation occurred. After I lost my little one, I stopped believing in God entirely for several years. I just couldn't bring myself to understand how any higher power could allow my child to be conceived in such a horrific way, allow me to love her so deeply, and then take her from me. I told her as much, and perhaps too impulsively, I ended up disclosing how I had become pregnant. At that time, this was a very big deal to me, as the only other person who knew was my OB, who sort of figured it out but was amazingly supportive and sensitive to my unique needs in that regard. What she said next is the part of the conversation that I remember most vividly. She told me that I must be relieved and grateful that God had obviously blessed me by taking away a child who would have been a painful reminder every day of what had happened to me. I don't have words for that. I can feel like the fire bubbling up in my gut, and I'm like becoming more enraged by the second. How dare she? How dare she? She had no right to say that too, and I'm really sorry that happened. Had she seriously not listened to a single word I had said? Again, I understand that for some women, having a child with that history could be a major trigger, and I would not judge them for that in the least. For me, however, my daughter was absolutely the one thing that made the trauma survivable, the best blessing that could have come out of one of my worst experiences. I was used to the toxicity of, look on the bright side, she's in a better place, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger culture. But this statement floored me. Honestly, it's still hard to wrap my head around, but less so after listening to your video. At the time, I unfortunately interpreted this as a sign that my story was not something I could safely share with other people. Now, for the reason that they might use the circumstances of my daughter's conception to judge her worth and the love that I had for her. A few years later, I did end up engaged in some incredibly helpful therapy that allowed me to be well enough to start opening up, to trust others, and to build the incredible support network I have today. After that, I attributed her comment to ignorance or simple religious rigidity. Now, realizing that she was likely trying to rope me into her MLM and understanding the culture of those companies from hearing so many of your videos, I imagine that she really wasn't listening to anything I said. She had no clue how much I loved my child or grieved her, simply because the only thing her brain had space for was figuring out the next best step of her pitch. She wasn't someone who reached out to me so persistently because she felt sympathy for the pain I was experiencing and simply cared that much. No, the more likely reality is that she saw a woman she knew who suffered a terrible loss and thought, I bet I can use this to get her in my downline. I can't remember what my response was to her, if I even gave one. I do remember her saying some more specific things to the R topic about how so much of this type of violence happens to minority women in other countries and how the sisterhood she was a part of also worked to end those issues. I'm not sure how much more I listened before I just made an excuse and a half-hearted commitment to talk more later, just so that I could go home and cry in private. She tried many more times to reach out to me, but I never responded again. And eventually she must have either gotten the message or left the MLM, because I can't remember when I last heard from her. I don't have much more commentary to end with other than to thank you for taking the time to read my story, regardless of whether you share it. I do wish that I had known then what I know now about MLMs, as it may have allowed me to see the true motivations behind her false offers of friendship, and saved me years of not having support because I was too afraid others would share her views. As I've said though, I do have that support now and I'm in a much better place. I won't pretend that I still don't experience significant pain relevant to my grief, but my counselor has taught me healthy, non-scammy ways to honor my love for my child and to build meaning and joy on top of that pain. Thank you for the good work you do, and my best to you and your family. Please give Zeke and Cooper extra scritches on my behalf. I really admire that you took the time to write out this email, even if you never sent it to me. Just doing that for yourself, I'm sure, was really cathartic. And the piece of all of this that I think is the most impactful is that now that you know what you know about MLMs and about the, I guess you you could call it the mind control or the brainwashing or the undue influence that people are under when they're involved with an MLM company, and how that makes them do things that are not okay and not something that they would normally otherwise do. But as you pointed out, they're not in their right mind. They're not thinking about how this is impacting you. They're just thinking about the next step of their pitch. And I think that's really powerful that now you have that insight, that context about what that person must have been going through at that time and what drove her to make those comments to you. Because you were not deserving of that. That was not okay, but she did it anyway. And maybe now understanding how MLMs operate, how people in MLMs operate, now you have some more, I guess, clarity around why she said the things that she said. And hopefully knowing that that had nothing to do with you and everything to do with her. She was not coming from a place of being a true, genuine friend or a listening ear or someone who could offer you compassion. You now know she was a sales lady on a mission. And that doesn't make it okay, but at least you have that context and that can help you in your healing moving forward. And you know, I have a really positive update on Trades of Hope that I haven't had a chance to talk about on my channel yet, but I saw this a couple months ago. I believe it was in early July, where I got notice that Trades of Hope dropped their MLM structure. I said it so many times in the Trades of Hope deep dive that I posted. I think that went live in January. I reiterated, like, this is a good business model. This has the potential to be something really, really great if they didn't have the MLM aspect, if they didn't incentivize recruiting other people, because that's the piece of it that opens it up to these predatory tactics. If people aren't incentivized to recruit other people, then they're not going to be engaging in behaviors like this, where you're meeting with somebody going through an immense amount of pain and you are preying on those vulnerabilities for your own financial gain. I haven't been able to fully dive into all the changes that Trades of Hope has made, but I will link their new webpage down below, where it doesn't look like there has to do with anything relating to an MLM structure anymore. At first glance, these changes look similar to what other MLM companies have done this year, like Saint and Rodan and Fields and maybe even Beauty Counter, where the company is still operational, they're still selling products, they still have people who have signed up to earn commission when they sell the products, but the whole MLM side of it is gone. Nobody gets any money for recruiting other people. You just make money on your personal sales. And I think that's a really encouraging thing for Trades of Hope to do, and I'm really happy to see that. So on one hand, I'm disheartened that something like this happened to you, but maybe we can feel encouraged going forward that there won't be any more Trades of Hope people doing this to others in the future. Thank you so much for having the courage to write in this email. I think it's an impactful lesson that we can all take with us, that when people in MLMs are acting a certain way towards us, it's helpful to have that perspective about what they're going through and to not take it personally. Even though it's not okay, we can hopefully not take those comments too personally and not carry the pain of those comments with us going forward. This story says, "Hi Hannah, I hope you and your family are doing well. I've been meaning to reach out for a while now. A few months ago, I was recommended one of your older MLM fails videos and realized that one of the clips was of me. It was a bit of a shock, but I wanted to let you know how much I appreciated the way that you handled it. I'm going to be a bit vague for anonymity reasons, so I completely understand if you decide to skip reading this story on your channel. My involvement with Monat started during a really tough time. My daughter was born with complex medical issues, and I was overwhelmed with her care and the financial strain of her treatments. I was desperately looking for a way to contribute financially while still being at home with her. A friend introduced me to Monat, and it seemed like a perfect solution. The promise of financial freedom, working from home, and joining a supportive community was incredibly appealing. I saw other moms who had turned their lives around with Monat, and I thought if they could do it, maybe I could too. Everything you've said so far is so common. I think the vast majority of people who get involved with MLM business opportunities can relate to being enticed based on one of these ways that you just listed. But as I got deeper into it, I became obsessed with proving Monat's superiority even as I was losing more and more money. I even conducted extreme experiments like setting various hair products on fire to show that Monat was the safest and best. I ignored the warning signs and I pushed these results on social media to convince others to join or buy the products. Everything changed when my daughter started losing her hair after using the products. It was heartbreaking to see her suffer from something that I had promoted. The guilt was overwhelming. I knew I had to leave Monat, but it was hard after investing so much time and energy into it. Seeing my story on your channel brought back all of those memories, but I was really moved by your empathy and understanding. You didn't just highlight my mistakes, you provided context that helped people see the bigger picture. Your insights have made it easier for me to confront my past and start healing. I'm also really grateful that you blurred my face in the video. You've helped me move past the mindset that I was just a failure, and I know you're making a difference for many others too. Thank you so much for everything you do, Hannah. Signed, an ex-Monat pyromaniac." Can I just say that on a personal level, getting a story like this is incredibly validating. Thank you. I admit that when I first got your email and I started reading it, my stomach dropped. I was like, no, somebody saw themselves in one of my videos. I never want to make people feel bad. And I can only imagine what that experience was like, seeing yourself in a YouTube video that some stranger posted on the internet. And at the start of your email, I was worried that you were going to be upset with me, or that you were going to be angry or defensive, or, give me a lecture on how horrible of a person I am for doing such a thing, because I get plenty of those kinds of messages too. But your email actually went in the complete opposite direction, and it was so validating for you to say, as someone who saw themselves in one of my videos, thank you for approaching it the way you did. Thank you for blurring my face. Thank you for making it about the issues, about the system, and not the individual people, because all of those things are like my mission statement. That's what I strive to do on this channel. And so to hear it from somebody who was in that position of being someone featured in an MLM Top Fails video to confirm all the goals that I set out to do, there's no greater gift. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Because on the back end of things, please forgive my tangent for a minute. Now that I've launched my Influencer Insanity series, where I don't blur people's faces unless they're children, I've gotten a lot of comments saying, why are you blurring the people in the MLM videos? Why are you doing the blurring? What's with the blurring? Don't blur them. Because I think a lot of viewers have found me through the influencer series, and so then they come back and they're watching my backlog of MLM stuff and they're confused about why the influencers are not blurred and the people in MLMs are. And I've almost gotten like a lot of pushback or a lot of questioning, like, why are you doing that? That's so weird. And so I'll take this opportunity to kind of clear that up, that when I'm doing the MLM Top Fails videos and I'm showing you clips of people who are in MLMs, I will always protect their identity. Because as we talk about all the time on this channel, that people who are in MLMs are saying things they wouldn't do, doing things they wouldn't do, acting in ways they wouldn't act because of their involvement in an MLM. And I have to assume the best. I have to remain optimistic that these people one day won't be in the MLM anymore. And this footage of them doing something crazy in the name of their MLM is just going to be a blip in their past that they probably want to move on from. It's likely something that they're going to go to their own social media account and delete and scrub from the internet because they don't want proof of that anywhere. Essentially, people in MLMs are acting on undue influence from the company. They're not acting on their own free will. And that's why I blur the faces. That's why I protect the identities, because it is never about shaming and blaming the individual. It's about showcasing the behaviors as an example of what goes on in the industry of multi-level marketing. And on the flip side of that, influencers, they're acting on their own free will, okay? No one is making them post this kind of thing. They are doing what they're gonna do because that's what they want to do. They have the idea in their head, they conceptualize it, they film it, they edit it, they post it completely unprompted from anything else. They're not under the mind control tactics of an MLM. They're not experiencing undue influence. They're not victims of an MLM scheme. So that's the difference. I have a lot more compassion and empathy for people who are in MLMs, and I will always protect their identity for this exact reason. Like I said, it could not have been easy to see yourself in an anti-MLM YouTube video and how you handled this response with such grace and reflection for your experiences in the MLM, and be able to say, that wasn't me. Those crazy setting products on fire to show that Monate is better than other hair care products kind of thing, like that was wild. That was a weird thing I did in my past, but I've moved on, and I could not be happier and more proud of you for that. Thank you for writing in your story. This story just jumps right in. It says, it's taken me over 6 years to finally be able to poke fun at myself for my cringy behavior when I was a distributor for the company that sold the wrap that tightens, tones, and firms the tummy. You guessed it, I was in none other than It Works. I'm not even sure where to start, so I'll just take you back to the very beginning, when I'd bought my starter pack on June 7th, 2016. Now, I know you're a numbers gal, so I had to pull through with some numbers to really give you the full perspective of my experience. Thank you. I love nothing more than cold hard facts. It took me 3 days of shuffling through over 20,000 emails. Yes, you read that right. To finally get to all of my It Works email confirmations from the start of my time with the company to the end with them 2 years later. I do wish to be kept anonymous due to some of the information regarding my employment that I will be mentioning below. When one of my best friends came to me with a pitch of joining her team, I was in my early 20s working a job that was absolutely mind-numbing. The company I was working for is an incredible company, which I'm actually currently employed with again. However, the tasks and the role I had at the time were very different from what I do now, and I absolutely love my current role and the company. I just needed to make that clear. Anyway, when my friend told me about It Works, something just clicked. I saw a chance at freedom, a chance to get out of the job that was killing my passion for life, and a chance to have fun with friends while I did it. Very quickly, I went from promoting It Works on the side during my breaks and after work to now calling in sick and skipping out on work to focus on promoting It Works and reaching out to as many people as I could. Now, I know this part is on me. No one made me do this, but I saw the the vision, the 0.1% at the top, and I thought, I can never get there with my current job in the way. And so, without any real success yet, I walked out of my stable job to pursue It Works full time and give it the full attention I felt it needed in order for me to become successful. My heart is sinking for you in this moment because just the nature that you are writing me an MLM horror story suggests that things didn't work out in the end, and to think that you quit a stable job to pursue an MLM business opportunity, which we know does not work out for most people, it's just like, no, like the slow motion, like, please don't do it. It's not gonna work. So I'm relieved that you prefaced the story by saying, don't worry, I'm back at a new job with my old company. Everything's fine now. I was added into the team Facebook group with my upline. There were many daily motivational quotes shared, and one of the ones I remember being promoted most often was the fake it till you make it. This was everywhere. To be successful, you have to act like you're already successful. Essentially, we were encouraged to share how working for It Works paid for our lifestyle and gave us a life someone working an average job couldn't have. Yes, I was one of those girls sharing the look, I can work from anywhere and building an empire of boss babes pictures on Instagram and Facebook, living the luxurious lifestyle that It Works provided me. That's a very good point that a lot of your job duties in an MLM are to portray a life that you're not actually living yet, because in order for you to live the good life, you have to recruit people, but you can't recruit people unless they're believing that you're living the good life. It's this whole like chicken or the egg situation. So what ends up happening is people just lie. They just lie about how they're living such a fantastic, luxurious life on social media as a result of their MLM, because you can't actually get to that point of living in luxury unless you have a ton of people underneath you. The very sad reality was I sat at the rank of Ruby for months. I barely made it to Emerald, and then I very quickly fell back down to Ruby, which at the time held an active DT monthly average salary of $474. Not nearly enough money for someone to pay all of their monthly bills and have the extras. That being said, because I still needed to promote the lifestyle, I needed to find a way to make it look like I was actually living that lifestyle. So what did I do as a naive 20-year-old trying to make it big? Throw it all on a credit card and hope that by the time the bill came, I'd be a high roller and have no problem paying it all off. As you can imagine, the success never came, and it was never for a lack of hard work, as the uplines would love to blame it on. I busted my butt off for almost an entire 2 years, meeting new people, posting online, having conversations from morning to night with people, promoting the products everywhere I went, even going to multiple It Works conferences at my own expense. After 2 years of hanging on to this business, 2 years of turning my good credit and zero debt into $12,000 in credit card debt that I could barely make the minimum payments on, 2 years of It Works if you work it and taking on side jobs secretly to help pay my bills because the business wasn't. And I finally had to accept the reality that I was never going to be in that 0.1% of the company. In April of 2018, I finally threw in the towel and announced to my team that I was calling it quits. I felt like an absolute failure and a joke. I felt like I was a bad person for recruiting others that I might have put in the same position I ended up in. For years, I carried so much guilt for the amount of people who joined under me, made next to nothing, quit, and that I left in the dust because they just didn't work hard enough. I still often wonder how these people are doing and if they've ever forgiven me for getting them on board with something that wasn't built for any of us to succeed. While I can totally understand feeling guilty, we have to remember that you're just doing the best you can with the information you have at the time. And at the time, you thought you were going to make it big and you were just doing what you had to do in order to get there and to fulfill your own goals. Hindsight is always 20/20, as cliche as that sounds, and I'm hoping that you're able to forgive yourself with that guilt. I'm sure there are plenty of people both above and below you in the pyramid who are also feeling some similar level of guilt too. To get back to the numbers, I did go through all of my emails, calculated all of my It Works product purchases and website fees versus my paychecks from It Works, and here is our big total. From the day I joined until the day I quit, I spent $2,148.82 and earned $4,768.91 for a total take-home of $2,620.09. While I'm grateful that I fell into a small percentage of people who earned more than they spent on product, I needed to include this in order for people to see that $2,620.09 for 2 years of putting your absolute heart and soul into something that isn't even your own at the end of the day is not worth it. I started watching your content about 2 months ago ago, and I've never been so grateful to stumble on something in my life. You made me realize that I'm not alone and that it's okay to learn and move forward from falling for a dream that just isn't tangible. Thankfully, now that I'm working the classic dreaded 9 to 5 that MLMers seem to think is so terrible, I've completely cleared my debt and I'm no longer struggling to pay my bills, and I genuinely love what I do. Thank you so much for spreading these statistics and the awareness around MLM business models to inform others and prevent people from falling victim to this scam. Truly a hero. Well, thank you. I think a hero is maybe a bit far, but I appreciate that nonetheless. In fact, I would say the true hero in all of this are the people like you who share your stories and the exact numbers. That is what I love to see, because we can talk all day long about how MLMs are harmful and everybody loses money, and if you do make money, it's not even that much money and it's not even worth it. So to have somebody like you come forward and say, that's correct, here's my numbers, I did the math, I made this much and I spent this much, and guess what? It was not worth my time. These kinds of cold, hard facts are so impactful and so powerful, and they help to get the message of how harmful MLMs are out there. So thank you for your role in that. Thank you for writing in your story, and I am so unbelievably glad. Not glad that you had this experience, not glad that you didn't make that much money, but I'm relieved to hear that although you left your job to pursue It Works, that you eventually got re-employed with that same company and you're doing something you love now, and that you didn't instead jump to another MLM. That's a really common trap that people fall into, that, this company didn't work for me, I'm gonna try out a different one. And they go forward to waste more time and more money, and they only prolong that realization that it's not the company, it's the industry, it's the business model, and it's the same everywhere you go. A very encouraging story of someone who tried an MLM, learned the lesson the first time, and then got to go back and maybe have a newfound appreciation for the dreaded 9 to 5. Thank you again for sending in your story. This one says, "Hi Hannah, my name is Autumn and I found your channel a little over a month ago when the algorithm suggested me one of your influencer insanity videos. I was immediately hooked on how well spoken you are and how clearly you present all of your information. You're so easy to watch." Thank you. You mentioned in one video that you see a big crossover between your following and true crime fans, which I found fascinating. I'm a big fan of true crime and cult documentaries, and MLMs feel like a much less serious form of that for sure. If you do decide to share this story, feel free to use my name and edit as needed. I'm a stay-at-home mom and I've been binging your horror story videos like a podcast while doing chores. The videos brought back so many memories for me and opened my eyes to how many MLMs I've bought products from or had exposure to. Arbonne, Young Living, Pampered Chef, Tupperware, Shackley. I've been binging the playlist backwards since I started with your most recent videos, and after 5 or so videos, I just figured I'd keep going backwards. I never thought I had a horror story until I got somewhere around Horror Stories 30 or something, and I heard a story about what people believe to be Salad Master. The person didn't know what MLM it was, and that sounded awfully familiar. I immediately called my mom and sister to try to correctly remember as many details about a very awkward dinner party we had at my house about 2 years ago. We researched Salad Master and realized it had to be that. We knew that it was an awkward evening, but never realized until now that it was an MLM pitch, since he just tried to sell us the product and not recruit us. My sister still had the voicemail from when the guy called to confirm the dates, and he said that he was from MCA Enterprises. When we looked up MCA Enterprises, we couldn't find any business online that would fall under cooking or cookware, etc. So I'm not sure if that's just what this chef called his business. Maybe he was trying to avoid advertising the Salad Master name like other MLMs who don't want to share the name of their business. This may not be as extreme as some of the other stories, but I hope it will at least be entertaining. It felt worth sharing since I've only ever heard of one other story of this specific MLM. Somewhere in the fall of 2022, my sister was at a craft show and was stopped by a vendor and told that if she entered into a drawing, she could win a free dinner party for her and 4 of her friends. So she did. We weren't really raised to watch out for MLMs. Our mom was never in one, but she purchased from several while we were growing up. So she just thought that it was a local chef doing a giveaway. A week or so later, she got a call from MCA Enterprises to tell her that she won the free dinner party and asking for a date that would work. She was told that food would be provided for up to 5 people and that all we had to provide was a clean kitchen and a sink. She was excited since we never win things. Now we know that she didn't win anything since everyone is a winner with these giveaways. Yeah, we've talked about that in previous videos, that if there is an MLM rep who has like a drawing box where you put your information in so you can win a free dinner party or win a facial from Mary Kay, everybody's a winner. Every single person who puts their name and phone number into that box is gonna get a call because it's not a free thing, it's not a party, it's a sales pitch. Anyway, we decided to do it at my house. It was my parents, my sister, my husband, and me. The chef showed up and carried an absurd amount of heavy pots and pans up the stairs into our very small kitchen and laid out all of his tools. At this point, I already had a strange feeling that he was going to try and sell us something, because who brings an entire set of pot and pans for one meal? He began by telling us his background and that he'd been a professional chef for X amount of years. I can't remember how many, but I remember it sounded impressive. He was wearing a gray chef's coat and seemed very official. He was pretty awkward and told cheesy jokes, and we all politely laughed and listened to him. This event was called Chef for the Evening and was made to seem like a prize. So we believed that he would be in the kitchen cooking us a delicious meal while we hung out, and then when it was done, we would eat our dinner and he'd be on his way. But here we are, all gathered around my tiny table listening to him describe each pot and pan. He told us what they were made from and how they all worked. He talked a lot about the rise of obesity and chronic health issues in our country and how this cookware can prevent that because you never have to use oils. And the way the pans cook prevents the loss of nutrients during the cooking process, as well as not releasing chemicals into our food since the cookware is non-toxic. He talked so much about taking care of our bodies. And while my family is fairly active and we all do eat pretty healthy, many of us are still plus size, at least in comparison to our very thin chef for the night. And I remember feeling self-conscious and wondering if he was judging us for being bigger. On top of that, this dinner party started at 6 p.m. and we were all pretty hungry to begin with. Since we normally eat around 6, we didn't know how far out dinner would be since he hadn't even started cooking after 45 minutes of setup and talking. Not to mention, I was only 2 months postpartum and breastfeeding around the clock. If you know breastfeeding hunger, you know I was ravenous. Yes, girl, I completely get that. Eventually, he pulls out his ingredients: 2 small chicken breasts, 2 small potatoes, and 1 head of broccoli. Not the ingredients we expected to see for a professional dinner, but we were hungry and we didn't care. He started by cutting the broccoli and setting it in a tall pot to steam, reminding us of how this form of cooking would lock in nutrients and make the broccoli much healthier for us than the other methods of cooking, like roasting. I personally prefer my broccoli roasted since steamed broccoli is usually soggy, but I digress. He made it seem like there was no way to steam broccoli other than this specific pan. Next, he pulled out a huge chef's knife and showed us how to properly cut food, then proceeded to have each person take turns cutting potatoes as he critiqued our technique. These he threw into another pan to cook. Then he sprinkled a small amount of Lowry seasoned salt on the chicken and put it in their version of an electric skillet to cook. He talked about how impressive these pans are, that you don't have to add any oil, and that the only seasoning needed was a small amount of seasoned salt since the pan traps all the flavor and nutrients in the chicken. You know, under seasoning is under seasoning. I don't know that any pan has the magic powers to make chicken taste more flavorful just because you put less seasoning on it. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm feeding 5 adults, one of which is breastfeeding and freshly postpartum, the amount of food he prepared would hardly seem adequate. One person can eat a small chicken breast by themselves, let alone splitting 2 small breasts among 5 people. We each had such a tiny amount of food on our plates and absolutely slammed it. It was probably 7:30 by this time, and it was incredibly bland and unimpressive, but we were starving. As we finally ate our dinner, he made dessert. He put a can of peaches into a pot and topped it with Jiffy Mix. Then he steamed it, I think. It made a soggy peach cobbler, which we also split 5 ways. This was probably the best thing he made, but again, not what I expected of a person who had been a professional chef for years. Do we think he was lying about being a professional chef? What professional chef serves canned peaches for dessert? I'm not crapping on canned peaches. They're good, but like you said, not what you would expect from a professional chef. As we ate our dessert, he pulled out catalogs and brochures so that we could peruse the selection of cookware and knives that he used that evening. The sticker shock was real. The Salad Master website doesn't actually list the prices of their cookware, which is a red flag to me. If a restaurant doesn't list their prices on their online menu, I know that it's out of my budget. The smallest set was thousands of dollars. The pans were almost $1,000 per pot or pan. My mom is a people pleaser to her core and found the most affordable item he had, which was a $100 chef's knife. She still has it, and it says Hammer Stall on it, which you can buy on Amazon. We found her knife on Amazon for about $70. He had a Hammer Stall catalog of knives, and he didn't have the product there. It was shipped to our house. So I'm not quite sure if this was something he was doing on the side to make some easy cash, since a $5,000 cookware set is a hard sell, but that wasn't part of the Salad Master MLM. My mom is still mad about it, and ironically doesn't like or use the knife. My mom and siblings all prefer a Cuisinart chef's knife I bought for $10 on Black Friday. After he did the dishes and was finally on his way, we all debriefed the situation. And after all that talk about healthy eating, half of his spiel, we went out and we grabbed a pizza. We were so hungry, and it was 9 p.m. by this point. We laughed about how ironic it was to eat a pizza after the healthiest meal we'll ever eat, but we didn't care because we were so hungry. We don't have the catalog anymore, so there's no way way for me to say 100% it was Salad Master. But the website advertises the chef for the night parties, and the cookware looks exactly like what he used. After realizing this was an MLM, I felt really bad for this guy. I started to wonder if this was inventory based and he was thousands of dollars in debt. At a minimum, he had purchased his own set of pots and pans to use for these shows, and the set he had, I believe, was between $6,000 and $8,000. I find it hard to believe that he ever made that back in commission. Additionally, he was selling at a craft show, which usually has an entrance fee, and he was likely responsible to buy the food he cooked for each dinner party, which is probably why it was such a small meal. He may very well have been a professional chef, but couldn't spend money on good ingredients for a free meal. And it makes me wonder why he left his career as a chef to pursue this. The whole thing makes me sad now. Like all MLMs, I'm sure he spent a lot of money he never got back, and I really hope he got out of it. Thank you for all the work you do to expose these disgusting companies and their predatory and cultish tactics. I'm so thankful for this channel. Before finding this, I just found MLMs annoying and I avoided them, but now I can say I'm fiercely anti-MLM and will not support their products even just to support a friend. And thank you so much for writing in this story. I think that you can share a similar experience to a lot of other people, that they don't know they have an MLM experience until they hear a name of a company that rings a bell, or like some light bulb moment goes off where they're like, wait a minute, it all makes sense now. That one really weird experience I had a few years ago, now knowing that it could have been an MLM, like it all clicks. And I think that's a pretty cool result of these videos. By sharing each other's experiences, we can sort of rationalize or put things together in our own minds about what has happened to us in the past. And it also speaks to the fact that I would feel comfortable saying the majority of people in the United States at least have an experience with an MLM, whether they know it or not. It seems like everybody you talk to has some sort of like adjacent connection, like they went to a party, they got pitched this one time, their friend was in one, they were in one. These companies run rampant in our society and in our culture. And so to have this forum of sharing horror stories with one another, it helps us to like commiserate. Oh, you went to a really awkward MLM party one time? Me too. I get it, girl. It's a pretty fun outcome of these stories, so thank you for sending yours in. And with that, my friends, it's all the MLM horror stories I have for you for this video. Thank you again to the writers of these stories. Without you, these videos would not be possible. So show them some love in the comments down below. And again, if you have your own horror story you'd like to send in, check out the description box for the instructions on how to do that. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in my next one real soon.